I think we spend a lot of time, at least I know in the past for me, I spent a lot of time teaching base runners how to run home to first, how to take turns at first, how to steal bases from first. And then I realized it's somewhere along the line that the most difficult place for a runner to make decisions is with second base, when they're at second base with less than 2 outs and no runner on first.
Welcome to another episode of the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast, where you will get expert, practical baseball coaching advice you can take directly to your next practice. Let's get started. Here's your host, Coach Kyle Nelson.
All right, coaches, welcome back to another episode of the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast. I'm your host, Coach Kyle Nelson. We have an outstanding show for you today, but first, I'd like to introduce you to a little bit about our podcast. I do want to welcome back those of you that are returning listeners. If you have liked what you've heard on our podcast, please head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It's going to help other coaches find the show and help us spread the word about some of the great things we're doing for youth travel and high school coaches at Cornerstone. For those of you that are new listeners today, I want to say welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. This podcast is just a little bit different than many of the other great baseball coaching podcasts that are out there right now. Each week, I'm going to give you an in-depth analysis and information on one specific topic that you can take directly back to your practice, your team, or your program to make them better immediately. Each podcast will be about 15 to 20 minutes long, so you can listen during your morning workout, while you're mowing the lawn, or on your drive to work. We do have several other ways you can interact with the show. You can follow me on Twitter at Coach_K Nelson. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes and Stitcher, so each week's show is sent directly to your mobile device. You can explore our website and blog posts at cornerstonecoachingacademy.com and cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/blog. And for those of you who are really serious, you can join Cornerstone Elite, our premium membership, where I show you exactly how to implement all the great information in a team setting with a small and limited coaching staff. We have over 50 practice plans and growing that can be implemented with just 2 coaches. I explain all of our programming for hitters, infielders, pitchers, and all of our drills, and much, much more. To join today, you can go to cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/cornerstone-elite. And just recently, our podcast has now been put onto Spotify and Google Play as well. So if that's how you obtain your podcast, you can listen to it there. You can also catch all of our podcasts on Vimeo and YouTube as well. So if you prefer to listen to them that way, you can go ahead and subscribe to our channels there, and each week you'll get our podcast episodes sent directly to you. Let's go ahead and get started with our topic today. It's not an overly sexy one that you're going to hear a lot about on the internet, or a lot about on some other baseball podcasts. It is a base running topic, which I think is a huge portion of the game that a lot of times goes overlooked, and especially this week's topic, which is going to be base running from second base. I think we spend a lot of time, at least I know in the past for me, I spent a lot of time teaching base runners how to run home to first, how to take turns at first, how to steal bases from first. And then I realized it's somewhere along the line that the most difficult place for a runner to make decisions is with second base, when they're at second base with less than 2 outs and no runner on first. And so we've started to spend a lot of time in our base running portion of our practices practicing that specific scenario. So we're going to go through exactly what I teach them, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we practice that as well, because I think there's a good and a bad way to practice that, just like there is anything else in the game. So the first thing they're going to do when they get to the base, before they take a sign, before they do anything, is they're going to see where the outfielder's depth is and where their positioning is. They're going to do this with their foot on the bag, and they do this so that they know on balls that are hit in the air to the outfield where those outfielders are starting, so they have a good idea if the ball is going to be down or likely to be caught. We're starting to see more and more shifts in high school baseball with our outfielders. And so it's good for them to know if they're playing in and right field and back and left, or if they're swung around in the gap. I think this has saved us numerous outs over the years, and also probably contributed a little bit to us scoring a few more runs, because we're able to get good jumps when we know they're playing deep in right field, and we hit a flare over the second baseman's head. Our runner at second has a good idea of where that outfielder is to begin with. It really helps with their reads. So that's the first thing they're going to do. After they have checked the outfielder's depth, then they're going to take their lead off. We have two basic types of leads. We have a deep lead and we have a straight line lead. So our straight line lead is going to basically be directly between second and third base. They are not going to get any depth whatsoever. They're going to be directly in the baseline. We are going to use this probably whenever we have less than 2 outs and we are looking to steal third base, or if we are bunting. Now, remember, we don't really use steal signs per se. We generally use red light and green light. So anytime they have green light and they're going to try to time up the pitcher, they're going to be up in the baseline so they can create that direct path to third base. So in pretty much every other instance, we're going to be taking our deep lead. And in order to execute the deep lead, first thing they're going to do is take 2 to 3 steps directly back towards the left center field fence, pretty much right in line with first base. And then they'll get their normal lead off from there, recognizing that because they are deep, they're going to need to be a little bit physically closer to the bag, not as far down the line as they would if they are in the line. However, we do think that gives them an advantage because they start their turn early. So we're going to use this anytime they are the only runner on second base, anytime there's 2 outs, anytime it's first and second with 1 out, or anytime the bases are loaded, or anytime it's second and third only, they'll be in that deep lead. So most of the time they are in that deep lead. But remember, in any instance where we're trying to steal or we're putting a bunt on, they're going to move up into the baseline to try to make that distance to third a little shorter. When we're in the baseline, our goal is to get to third. When we're deep, our goal is to score and get home. The next thing we're going to talk about then with our players is balls on the ground and what to do with the ball on the ground. This takes some practice because there's a little bit of feel involved in this. I do think that it's good, as we've started to see a little bit more shifting with our infield, with our infielders. I've noticed that we have run into a couple situations where our shortstop has thrown a runner out at third, or an opponent shortstop has thrown us out at third on a ball that was hit to our left on the ground. So the golden rule, right, with balls on the ground, if you're at second base, is and this is obviously with less than 2 outs and no runner at first, so no force at third. The golden rule is kind of, if it's balls hit at you or to your left, then you're going to go head to third, and if the ball's hit to your right, then you're going to stay. And where we've run into some issue with this is when we've had shifts. So if they've pulled their shortstop inside the runner and they're positioning him there permanently, so between the runner and second base, he's obviously going to be a little bit deeper. But when a ball is hit, and specifically hard hit balls directly at that shortstop, a good shortstop is still going to be able to turn and make that throw to third. I still think it's a good thing to go on that play because it does take a certain kind of shortstop to be able to do that, number one. And number two, it's only happened a few times in the last couple of years. And so I really think that the reward you get from advancing on that play, so a hard hit ball slightly to your left with the shortstop swung around there, is going to be more beneficial than the risk of getting thrown out a couple of times per year. But it's just something I've noticed over the past couple of years as teams have started to shift specifically on left-handed hitters and pull their shortstop in between our runner at second and the base, because they're probably holding him with the opposite field infielder, and so he's most likely staying around that area. But we do pretty much go with that same rule there. At you to your left, you're going to go. To your right, you're going to hold, and that is from their secondary lead. Now, things that change this equation just a little bit are how hard the ball is hit, specifically if it is hit softer. And so any ball that is hit to the left side, even if it's to the right of the base runner, that takes the third baseman away from the base, we are going to advance on that. So if you see the third baseman go up in front of the baseline and come away from third base, that is a ball that you can advance on even though it's hit to your right. The reason being he's not going to be able to catch it and get back to the baseline in time in order to tag the runner. Also, there's likely not going to be anyone covering third. The shortstop should not be able to beat you there. Even a savvy pitcher probably cannot beat you there. On that play. And so that's a chance that we are going to take. We're also going to treat any kind of a chopper in front of home plate, even if it is to our right, as a bunt, and we're going to take off on that play as well. Line drives, we have been teaching our players to go back a step on line drives. I know that conventional wisdom is to freeze on line drives, but we have been actually, and I'm talking like, the line drive that can be caught by the infielder, right? I'm not talking about a line drive to the outfield. I'm talking about a line drive that can be caught by an infielder. So say 7 feet and under as it crosses the infielder's path. We're teaching to take a step back. And the reason that we're teaching to take a step back is that if you freeze, a lot of times on a bang-bang play, that's going to be too late. And also, if you are freezing and the ball gets through, you're not scoring from second. So let's say that a ball is hit really hard right at the shortstop and you freeze. If it gets through, you're not scoring because you froze. If he catches it, you're probably out at second base. You probably get doubled off because you're stationary and he catches the ball, and the second baseman should be there to double you off. So we're teaching to go back to the base, take a step back. That's really all you're going to have time to do in this scenario. You're going to take one step back toward the base on a infield level, infield catchable line drive. We're going back to the base with a step. That way we just have our momentum going back, and it gives us a little bit more of a chance to get back in the instance that ball is caught. Specifically, it helps when you're at third. I know this podcast is really about running from second, but it really helps when you're at third because that ball, we've probably seen this several times throughout our careers, that ball that's hit really hard at the third baseman and he catches it and is able to take 2 or so steps to the bag and step on it. If you're coming back towards the base on that play, you've got a much better chance of not getting doubled off there. That's one of the worst feelings as a coach because your guys did almost everything right, and it turned out as badly as it could for them. Your hitter absolutely smoked the ball. Your runner froze as you taught him. Third baseman catches it, takes 2 steps to his right, and doubles you off and gets out of a potentially big inning. So anyways, back to our topic. So that's what we do on line drives. Balls in the air, how aggressive we are is going to depend on the number of outs. And so if with nobody out, we teach to be a little bit less aggressive on their down read. So they see the ball go in the air to the outfield as far as, I'm talking like outfield depth and in front. So that one that's in between the infielder and the outfielder, kind of like the looping line drive or the somewhat lazy fly ball. With nobody out, they're going to be less aggressive on their read because they know that advancing to third, they still have a lot of opportunity to score in that inning. Whereas if they get doubled off, they're not going to obviously have any opportunity to score. So with nobody out, we're a little bit less aggressive. We're a little bit more aggressive with one out because it becomes a little bit less likely that if they just advance to third, they will end up scoring from there. So we're a little bit more aggressive on that read. And the read I'm talking about is the catch, no catch read, right? The ball gets, let's say it's kind of a flare in between the right fielder and the second baseman. They already know where the outfielder is because they've processed that at the beginning of the at-bat. And with nobody out, if it's in between and they're unsure, they're more likely to go with more likely to stay. With one out, they're more likely to break towards home. The next thing we're going to talk about is balls in the air and when to tag and when it's beneficial to tag and that sort of thing. This is something that is I don't know if there's really necessarily a golden rule with this, but here's what we like to tell our players. Balls to left field, I'm talking like medium to deep depth fly balls to left field, you are probably not advancing. So you want to get far enough that you can get back without getting doubled up on the play, but also that if the ball drops, you have an opportunity to score on that play. So we're talking just like a medium to medium deep depth fly ball to right field, something that's going to take the outfielder back. To center and right field. Right field is obviously the one where you have the best opportunity to advance. Center would be the next best opportunity to advance. Generally in high school baseball, we've found that if the outfielder, center, or right fielder has to go back, it's going to be difficult for them to reset their feet, get behind the ball, catch it, and make a throw all the way to third base. The exception would be the center fielder who is moving towards third base already. So it's something into left center field, we're going to be a little bit less likely. So I'm talking about balls hit at the second base bag and to the right field side of that. Anything that's going to take them back, we're going to at least go back to the bag and tag on. How aggressive we are is going to depend on a couple of things. Number one, it's going to depend on how the outfielder catches the ball. If they catch the ball going back, we are going to advance 100% of the time. If they catch the ball coming in, now we have a little bit more decision to make. Hopefully we have some information about that outfielder's arm from pregame and things that we've seen. At our place, the wind actually plays a pretty big role in this scenario. We have a very, very windy field. We're up on a hill. If the wind is blowing in the outfielder's face, that's a really difficult throw to make. If it's blowing in from, say, a lot of times our wind blows from right field to left field or from right field straight in. And if that's the case, then we're going to be a little bit less aggressive on that play because the wind's helping and aiding the outfielder's throw. Something else that we're going to look at is the number of outs. With nobody out when the ball is hit, we're going to be a lot more likely to advance than we would be with one out when the ball is hit because you assume that the catch is going to make the first out, and we would love to be on third base with one out. If we have one out when the ball is hit, the catch makes the second out, and I'm not such a huge believer that you can't make the third out at third base, but the reward of advancing that 90 feet with two outs is not as great as it is advancing 90 feet with one out. With pass balls and wild pitches, one of the biggest things that we're going to look at when we see a down angle, from second base, we're getting momentum going towards third, so maybe an extra shuffle, a couple steps or two. We see the ball hit the ground, and we are actually going to read here. At first base, we don't do much reading. At first base, we do see the angle go. At second base, we're going to read because the distance the catcher has to throw the ball is so much less. And in particular, one scenario where he blocks the ball and it heads to his left or towards third base, that one is going to be particularly difficult to advance on. So if a catcher is able to block it and hold it right in front of him, we're going to stay. If he blocks it and it blocks towards third base, we're going to stay. If he blocks it and it kicks far out towards the pitcher, we're going to go. Or if he blocks it and it kicks towards first base, we're going to go. Those are the reads that we want our players to have from second base. I think that being aggressive but intelligent and not taking unnecessary risks, like I would call trying to advance to third on a ball that kicks towards third base, an unnecessary risk because the catcher, if he's athletic or has a good arm at all, that's a relatively easy play for them to make, as opposed to the ball that kicks to their right. Even some of the best catchers we see really struggle on that ball kick to their right to get up, move towards first base, corral the ball, get it in, get a grip, and then change their momentum back towards third base to make that throw. So those are kind of the things we talk about with our players. Then how do we practice this? One of our favorite things to do during base running is to have a station where we put some pitchers in the outfield. We ask them not to go running after baseballs because one of them is going to get hurt. They're going to collide with each other. They're going to trip on a ball that's already out there. They're just out there for visual, and they move around a little bit. So they move back, they move sideways, they shift, they move around a little bit to give our base runners a good read. And we'll put base runners out there at one of our stations, and we'll have a coach hit fungo from home plate. We'll also give them, so we'll try to hit as many different of these scenarios as we can. Ground ball up the middle, ground ball to the right side, chopper out in front, flare to the right, deep fly ball to center, deep fly ball to right, flare to left. We're trying to give them as many different reads as we can during this station. I think that's a really good way to work on it. Guys who take batting practice on the field, that is by far the best time to work on this. I would not probably emphasize so much base running from first in that scenario. I would really emphasize base running from second, because no matter how much you hit a fungo, there's nothing that simulates a ball off the bat like a ball off the bat, even if it's in batting practice setting. So we want to make sure that if we're doing batting practice on the field, that we're taking advantage of that situation for our runners at second. And we will actually work with our catchers sometimes, and we'll set up a station for them to practice blocking, scrambling, and even adding a throw to that if we want to on occasion. But most of the time, they're just going to block and scramble to the ball and give our runners at second base an opportunity to read that play. And when we do that drill, we'll put runners at all the bases, let them get their secondary lead when the coach raises his leg, and then when he throws, they're going to read the ball independent of each other. So the runner at first pretends like there's no runner at second, the runner at second pretends like there's no runner at third, and so on. That gives them the opportunity to work all their different reads on pass, ball, wild pitches, because I really believe they are all different. The read at first is more of a go read when you see the angle. The read at second is a go when you see it bounce and you know the direction it's bouncing. And then the read from third is completely different because there is going to be no throw. It's going to be, can you beat, I guess there might be a throw back to the pitcher, but you're not throwing to a base. It's a completely different read from third base. So we practice that in 3 bases with a catcher and a coach out there throwing balls in the dirt, throwing balls not in the dirt, and just letting them get reads and secondaries and things like that. So I hope that you found this topic enjoyable and picked up something you can take directly to your next practice with it. I think it's a really important topic because we talk a lot about hitting, we talk a lot about pitching, we talk a lot about fielding, and we talk a lot about stealing bases, which I think is very beneficial. But to me, the area where you have the most decisions to make while you're base running is at second base with less than 2 outs and no runner on first. And so we practice that scenario a lot, and we practice it often, at least once or twice a week, as much as we can, depending on how much we're playing. But if I have to pick something to make sure it's in my base running rotations, that is going to be one that I make sure is in there almost every week, if not at least once or twice per week. These are the things that a lot of times go overlooked that really can make the difference in close ball games. I know that, if you come out and bang the ball around the yard and you score 10 runs and your pitcher throws a shutout, those types of things don't really make a huge difference, and not doing them correctly can sometimes go overlooked. But in a close ball game, in a tight ball game against an evenly matched team, these are things that are really important and really can make the difference between a win and a loss. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast today. If you did, please join us by subscribing on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play. You can also follow us on YouTube and Vimeo as well. Have a wonderful week and never stop learning.
Thanks for listening to the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast. If you liked what you heard here and you're looking to take your team, your program, and your coaching career to the next level, there is no better resource than a Cornerstone Elite membership. Get everything you need to run an amateur team, including dozens of drills, games, practice plans, e-courses, and much more, right at your fingertips, wherever you have an internet connection. Check it out today at cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/cornerstone-elite. We will be back next week with another great episode on the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast.